here we are again with another episode of the final season, Season 8 of My Hero Academia. There's a lot that we really need to go over, with a lot of small changes made to the episode to some details that you might have missed. All of that and more will be discussed in this episode. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do my breakdown review for My Hero Academia Season 8, Final Season, Episode 6. So, there's a lot that we really need to go over in this episode, so I'm going to dive right into it. But before I do that, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that notification bell, as well as leave a like on the video to show that you want to see more content like this. And without the way, let's dive right into the breakdown of this episode. And to start off, the episode is titled Wrench It Open Izuku Midoriya with 2 exclamation marks, as it takes its name from manga chapter 416, and this episode actually covers new material from chapters 414, 415, 416, and the first 10 pages of 417. And you'll understand why that's the case towards the end of the episode, with a very much major reveal that is not that shocking. And to start off, the episode begins very much like in manga chapter 414, with Deku confronting Tomura from a different angle as his body is moving thanks to the help of Black Whip, as he goes on the offensive to try and transfer the second user Kudo to Tomura, as he uses his quirks in ways that only he can, due to Deku's admiration of quirks as a whole. This and his following actions will actually lead to why the Vestiges, especially In, are willing to sacrifice themselves with Deku, especially with last episode, where In was very hesitant to do so. And that happens all before the opening runs, where afterwards we get Deku thinking about how One for All can only be transferred by choice, even if that choice is forceful, and how he will be able to use that to his advantage by using his own blood as the catalyst to try and transfer One for All to Tomura. And how this is actually depicted by a new anime original visual that shows the light vestiges coming together as one and is centered around Tomura's chest, which is where Deku is going to primarily land the attacks to try and transfer One for All into him. But after that scene, we also get the sequence expanded upon and recontextualized in this episode that we saw in the last episode involving Tomura and his arm, where in the manga, very much like in the anime, Tomura does cut off his arm because he senses something wrong going on with Deku. However, in the anime, they do add to the sequence by having Danger Sense go off moments before, which allows for Tomura to cut off his hand. But in the manga, it's more or less a feeling, so it kind of makes sense that Danger Sense will go off in the sequence instead of it being purely based off Tomura's senses and getting the quote-unquote heebie-jeebies, especially with what we see later on in the episode of him getting that exact same feeling of Danger Sense when Deku tries to pull off a similar attack. And it's from here where they both regain their composure and resolve, and the attacks and the action continues. And this is where we have Tomura and Deku charging in at each other, very much like in the manga, where unfortunately the implication in the manga is that they are speaking at the same time, but in the anime they take it like sequentially. But this is where we get to see Deku's big brain in action, where he's able to prevent decay from spreading using Black Whip and sending it into the ground and lifting it up, very much similar to how the other individuals in the UA flying coffin in the sky were able to prevent decay from spreading by having the metal blocks send Tomura up as well. Which makes sense because Deku would have been in that flying coffin if it wasn't for Toga, so of course he would have had this in mind because he knew about it prior. But also what's interesting about this scene is how the anime expands it from what we got in the manga, where in both sequences in the anime and manga, it is very much stated that Deku was sending Black Whips into the ground as a way of preparing for this to happen. However, it is expanded upon in the anime by not just showing Black Whip going into the ground, but showing that Deku was using Black Chain as well. So it really adds to the idea that Deku has been strategizing and kind of been one step ahead of the curve the entire fight, But also what really just shows off the strategy in both the anime and the manga is how Deku is able to get around the search quirk while using In's smokescreen quirk in a way that In thought was going to be useless, but ended up being useful, and the defining factor for why In was the one who was able to break through into Tomura in that moment. Because he pulls off a similar strategy with Lady Nagant of having the Gran Torino scarf obscure Tomura's vision and act as a decoy, while also taking advantage of the fact that because Tomura was able to see the vestiges, search would in a way work on the vestige and the quirk factors that reside inside of One for All, and Deku was able to use that to his advantage to sneak behind a pre-established quirk factor and more or less do a sneak attack punch on him. And what's very interesting about this sequence is if you look very carefully, you can see the return of the hand armor that we saw when Tomura was fighting in the flying coffin, as it knows that something bad is about to happen and just by instinct and reflex is trying to protect Tomura, but unfortunately it was too slow and Deku was just too fast. And overall, the anime does this manga scene justice. However, it doesn't just stop from there, because the next sequence is almost nearly better than what we got in the manga. Because as we get the title card of this episode being dropped, we see that Kudo was able to break into the lead ball, as there's an added overhead shot showing the entire battlefield covered in smokescreen, which was not in the manga, but we begin to transition into the trippiest scene of this entire fight, the realization and manifestation of the memories of Tomura and Deku. And what's very interesting is that the anime does animate the flashback memories as they are in the manga as being a part of the environment and having the characters being placed inside of these memories. However, there are some slight changes between the anime and the manga. For instance, in the manga, we get clear images of the characters being shown in the memories as if they are actually happening and that they're actually being implanted into these moments. However, in the anime, these images are more blurry and distorted as if they are captured from a very old camera and is a lot more grainier in comparison to the characters of Deku and Tomura who would be implanted into these memories. However, the anime does animate the sequence of Toga and Dabi meeting Tomura for the first time, but they do it not just having them appear, but manifest sort of kinda from the smoke. And something else that the anime does is that it makes this sequence more colorful and shows more memories throughout the series in this sequence than in the manga. Because in the manga, the few images we see of the memories appear in a tunnel void-like state that resembles the world of the vestiges in the mindscape of both Deku and Tomura, but the anime shows the void as being more of a collective of memories that are circling and entunneling them as Deku lands the hit, which actually is able to transfer In, who is motivated and inspired by everything that Deku has done to be the next person to break through into Tomura. But as the sequence is happening, you see in the actual circular cylindrical tunnel area that it's being flooded by nothing but memories that you could tell are from not just one point in the series, but throughout the entire series as a whole. For instance, in this tunnel, you can see obviously Mineta as well as Suyu, which are memories shown in the manga and the anime. However, if you look closely enough, you get to see images of Ida during his interactions with Stain, as well as Stain throughout the story, as well as you get to see other characters such as Kurogiri, Endeavor, Aizawa, and if you're looking closely, even Mina and Hagakure, as well as Aoyama as well. And while you could in a way pinpoint where they are within the series, there are just too much to count. But it just really shows how much thought the anime decided to put into the sequence by really just showing and emphasizing that these are the memories of both Deku and Tomura and how they are merging together as one in this one continuous tunnel. So it's a cool detail that the anime added that really emphasizes and adds to this moment. And there's even more that is added to this moment even when it comes to Deku punching Tomura in this moment. Because as Deku lands that second hit on Tomura, all of the other vestiges except In bounce back. This sequence also gets expanded upon by focusing more on the vestiges moving forward towards Tomura as they are connected before they appear in Deku's fist to try and break through into Tomura. And by doing so, the anime is able to add a little bit more weight to this action, while adding even more weight by having Deku break through multiple of the fleshy tendril fingers before hitting the main body, which is actually not shown in the manga, but is stated to have been the case in the manga, while we actually see it happen in the anime. And you may be wondering, why didn't Deku get decayed? Because he was technically touching the fingers? Well, he did it so fast that they didn't have a chance to activate, so that's my explanation. And on a small note, there's something very interesting that happens after Deku lands this second hit. Because we do get to see, very much like in the manga, another memory, this time from Tomura, of a man holding a small Tomura Tenko's hand walking away. And for those who are aware of who this individual is, you know where this is going. But to those who don't, the anime adds something to this moment to very much foreshadow who this person is. Because the man holding Tomura's hand is the man that we've seen before in Tenko's memory when it comes to Tenko Shimura's origin, who is the person who returned him back to his home. And if you listen closely, you hear a musical cue that is associated with All for One. So in a way, the anime in this moment is telling you that the person holding Tomura's hand is All for One, and there is going to be a major reason why that we're going to learn about in the next episode, so stay tuned. And this is very important because it just shows and emphasizes that the memories that we are seeing are real, and that they are showing how One for All and All for One, Tomura and Deku, are becoming more connected the more they fight with each other. But now we're approaching more towards the end of the episode, as now we get a point where the action begins to slow down as we return to the Flying Coffin UA, where the sequence of Mei and Labrava talking about Deku and showing how they're responsible for streaming the fight now and how it's still being recorded is expanded upon more in the anime, alongside an expansion on how the students and other heroes were able to evacuate UA thanks to the help of the Cementos hero as well as Gentle Criminal. So this really just shows why it was important for Gentle Criminal to be here, because he is pseudo responsible for saving all of the lives in the Flying Fortress of the UA Flying Coffin. And I love how the anime does also show a lot more heroes who are helping with the evacuation, as we actually cut over to an expanded scene of Eri trying to go and help Deku, but is comforted by Kota as well as Ectoplasm. And it's also from here where we get another slightly expanded upon conversation between Kaminari and Momo, as Kaminari is questioning if he's a good person because he doesn't have the same faith in Deku that he did in All Might. As well as we also get to see the sequences of the news crew rescuing both Hawks and Uraraka and taking them to safety, as well as we get to see Rocklock confronting Lady Nagin about why she supports Deku so much. And what's interesting about this part of the episode is that as these smaller, slower moments are being introduced and being shown to emphasize the importance of Deku's connection with other characters, as well as their connections with him and why they are rooting and supporting for his victory, all of this is actually interspliced with expanded action sequences of Deku ripping through the fingers of Tomura Shigaraki, which is very much like in the manga, where we get to see a lot more action, a lot more choreography, and what is even more important, a more clearer view that everything that is being shown in this moment is from the perspective of the viewers in world. which is why it was important that they established that Mei and La Brava are still recording this fight, because all of the action that we see interspliced with these moments are literally action sequences that the characters are watching alongside us. So every slash, every rip through, every cool action that the anime adds to this moment, we are watching it, but we're watching it from the perspective of the viewers in world. And it all is going to accumulate in Deku just ripping and gashing through all of these fingers, being supported by the other characters as he's finally able to land another hit on Tomura, as we get the symbolic representation of Tomura telling Deku to stay away, very much like his father, as Deku lands that hit that transfers all except one vestige, almost shattering through the lead ball completely. And something else that I want to bring up is how the anime shows this entire fight sequence from the perspective of a camera and being recorded by transitioning from watching Deku's face clear up of the black whip on Lady Nagin's phone being held by Rocklock to being on the big screen at the evacuation hideout in Shiketsu. Once again, just emphasizing that this is being seen by everyone around Japan, if not the world, seeing how far Deku is going to try and protect them. And as the episode approaches the end, we get a giant flash of light after Deku lands that massive hit on Tomura, as he transfers most of the users of One for All except Nana into Tomura, as we get the sequence like in the manga of Deku transitioning into the sort of mindscape subconscious of Tomura, where he is trying to confront and get close to Tomura's origin, where he also confronts some villains of his past where he does not necessarily have a plan, but it's not going to stop him from doing what he believes is right, as he also learns that anything that happens into this subconscious world, due to the fact that One for All and All for One are now as close as they can ever be, that any damage that happens to him will also happen to his real body. And as he's approaching the house and he opens the door of Nana and her son, the episode ends with the infamous scene of Kotaro slapping Tomura in front of Deku and Nana Shimura as the episode ends. And this is where, in the next episode, something spectacular yet controversial is going to happen. I can't wait for that to happen. So yeah, this is my breakdown and review of this episode of My Hero Academia. So I thought there was a lot of cool and small additions that really amplifies and improves this episode spectacularly. I love the amazing action. I love the emotional beats. I even love a lot of the more musical cues that were used in this episode, and how it's building up and crescendoing to the climax of this entire series, which we are going to be seeing within the next 3 episodes. And seeing how the pace of this entire season is going, we are very close to the end. And with us being so close to the end, I like to see it to the very end, and hopefully you feel the exact same way as I do. So yeah, this is my breakdown and review of this episode of My Hero Academia. So let me ask you this: how did you feel about the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And do you think that Deku has a chance of finally finishing off Tomura in the next episode or 2? Leave your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. So do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!